Hi, everyone. This is Steve Delasan, and welcome to this week's edition of CEOs You Should Know. I am thrilled to be joined by Eric, the CEO of I Want to Be Prettty. Eric, thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me here today, Steve.
We're excited to jump in to learn more about you and, of course, more about the company.
I'm excited for it.
Awesome. So I know you went from 8 years in the ICU, especially during the heart of COVID, to launching I Want to Be Prettty. Tell us about that journey, and what was that one defining moment that really pushed you to take the leap? I know that at the time, you only had $10,000 in the bank account.
Yeah, that was kind of crazy. And if anyone has ever had $10,000 in the bank account and made a leap like that, you understand how intense that feeling is.
Yeah, for sure.
So in the ICU, I spent a long time, working in the ICU, worked in the neuro ICU. And then when COVID hit, which was one of the most intense experiences, especially because we got hit, one of the first hospitals that got hit on the East Coast with the COVID, patients. It was just a really crazy experience. And, as a nurse and in working in the medical field, you do end up with a lot of empathy and experiences and feelings for these patients. And just seeing, the end of life and almost like the worst experience all the time, it was definitely like a little bit darker than I ever wanted to live. I kept thinking the end of my life was going to end up in a hospital bed like this. So when I had transitioned and I was doing aesthetics in the first place, I noticed it was like able to make a difference, make people happy, and also do a lot of creative, preemptive things to get people into like wellness and aesthetics. And I felt like that was a way of actually continuing on with the medical aspect, but in a way that I actually could see, the positive impact.
Sure.
Instead of always seeing such the negative. And both experiences are great. And we, obviously our frontline workers, it's super important that they're there and doing that stuff. But it was just such a nice transition to bring about a different type of change in the medical field. And with $10,000 in the bank, that was crazy. I'm not going to lie. I remember the day that I decided to finally sign the lease and just jump at it. My cousin had came over. I was telling her we'd opened a business a long time ago. But it was with my family. Like I didn't have much risk at that time. But she sat me down and she was just like, you just have to do it. You just like, if you feel like you're going to do it, you just have to do it. Because once you jump in, you're just going to keep going up. So we're not, but just have to do it. So yeah, that's kind of like the start of this thing. And I can't believe I'm here, honestly. And I can't believe I look back at my life and I'm like, I can't believe I spent all that time in the ICU and then all the way into this completely different field, completely different experience. I mean, like, it's a whole different ball game.
That's awesome. Well, thank God you took that leap, right?
Yeah.
And I know that being an entrepreneur isn't something that's new. You've really been doing it since childhood, starting your first business at 10. How did those experiences along the way get you ready for the luxury company you have today?
Well, okay, so I told you what that first business was, right?
You did not.
Oh, my goodness. So my first business, I was like 10 years old, and I went to a pet shop. Loved animals when I was a kid. I went to a pet shop, and I remember I loved to talk to people. When I was 3 years old, my mom told me, I ran up to her, or it was 4 or 5, I can't even remember, whenever you can talk, whenever that is. I went up to my mom and I said to her, I was like, I just made a friend. It was so easy. And then I ran back out, came back up, and I was like, I made another friend. It's even easier. And she was like, oh, this kid's like really outgoing. So that being said, I was always having a fun time, like talking to people, getting to know people, and I met the pet shop owners. And this story is a little crazy because when I met the pet shop owners, I just always was asking and inquisitive and asking questions. And I really liked the gerbils. And I said, like, where do you get your gerbils from? Like as a kid, like, why do I need to know the wholesale cost of gerbils? Anyways, they were like, oh, we get them from a breeder. And I was like, interesting. I bought the gerbils. I went home. I got a book on breeding gerbils. I bred the gerbils and somehow talked to them about, hey, can I sell some of those gerbils to you? I don't know if that was legal, but I did it. And even crazier, at that point in time, one of the other people there asked me if I wanted to catch them some frogs and turtles and sell them to them. And I was like, yeah. So that was like my goal. I made money as a little kid by like catching animals, selling them back. But the big part of that was it was my first learning how to create relationships and business. And I think that has translated across all of this time because throughout all of the business that I've had ever, it's always been about relationship building and how you build trust, foster, a connection with people. And that really just taught me at a young age. If you have a connection, conversation, sometimes you can find a like goal. It just gets you places like selling gerbils and turtles in your young age.
Well, that's a wild story. I know that obviously we learned from taking that risk originally with the $10,000 in the bank is that taking risks is part of your mindset. I know that you are about to compete a 5-day race along the Arctic Circle. How does that risk-taking mindset really translate into you being a founder and the CEO?
So we're going to fast forward to the future because I just finished that.
Oh, nice.
Let me just tell you, sometimes I think to myself, I'm like, why did I do this? But part of the reason I even did that in the first place is because I love that challenge. And I'm not afraid of the challenge. I love the experience, and I love seeing what's on the other side of that. Whether it's the views, whether it's experience that you have with people, whether it's just satisfaction at the end of the challenge. I think as an entrepreneur or a CEO or however you call yourself, you have to take risks, and you have to know that you have no control of the outcome other than what you put yourself into and how much work you put into it. And even sometimes then it doesn't always work out.
Yep.
So that being said, you have to, and I'm not going to say don't take calculated risks. That's stupid. I took time to plan for something like this. And planning looks differently to everybody. Like for me, planning to get into the aesthetics business, I spent time learning about it. I spent time creating at least a good small amount of clients that were so loyal that they would bring me more clients. Like
Sure.
even if it was a small amount, it was enough to actually continue to help support me. So even though we say risk taking, it's more also preparation, right? And doing something like that, or taking that risk at $10,000, it's not like you just jump and you're like, I'm taking a gamble here. You do take that time to prepare. But the problem is that I think people prepare, and they are always
They never take
afraid
that risk.
of taking the
Yeah.
risk. And I have that with some of the people so I have mentors in my life, and I have people that I coach. And sometimes with the people that I coach, I'm always like, I want to like Spartan kick them like right off the edge. I'm like, you got this. But they're like, they're learning and they're at their own comfort zones. But you really, sometimes it's so easy to get in your head that you need
Totally.
to over prepare or under prepare. But at the end of the day, sometimes it's just about taking the dive.
That's awesome. Congrats on that.
Thank you. That was crazy.
It's exciting.
Yeah, we should go next time.
I got to check it out. All right, so let's talk about the brand and the company, right? I know that your brand in particular, it blends that clinical expertise with that luxury, highly personalized experience. How do you train and develop and lead your team to kind of balance those two things, right? That medical trusted advice, but that elevated guest experience.
Well, I'm going to say, and I've just like realized this as sometimes you look at yourself and you're like, oh, how did I get there? But first off, you got to keep it fun. Okay, because clinical environments, especially coming from the hospital and going into aesthetics, I think that medicine in general, we have a different mindset in the hospital. And sometimes it gets translated into aesthetics, so it gets too clinical, too tough. I feel like nervous going into certain places. You just have, those people here for a service, you have to have fun. On the clinical side, you need to make sure you're educated. You need to make sure you're putting in the time and effort to learn things. You need to make sure you're looking at evidence-based research, not just kind of reading everything off TikTok and following trends. But on the other side, you do need to know that these people are here for a service. They're here to feel good, look good. They might be going through a divorce, or they might be going through a bad breakup or a job loss. They don't want to feel extra clinical. It's like kind of sterile. So you want to make sure you keep things fun. And that's why I called the brand I Want to Be Prettty. Because it was just like, all right, what is just like casual and funny about this? And that's where I just went. I was like, let's keep it fun. Let's keep it elevated. I wear pink gloves because I think it's just like an added little touch where it's just like, it's not some crazy sterile glove in your face.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, we're here to have a good time.
That's fun. Well, I know I Want to Be Prettty, you emphasize that natural, not done look, right? And I know that in the industry, sometimes it's really driven by like dramatic transformations. How do you innovate while staying true to that philosophy?
That's so fascinating. Well, so first off, innovation does not mean following any type of trend, right? And I always say, like, this might not be a great example, but I think Chanel like holds a very nice, long, classic, timeline of always kind of staying somewhat in trend because they keep the same concept of what is classy, but they have like small alterations here and there. And the same with, aesthetics. You treat people like a bonsai tree. This is the weirdest analogy, but you treat people like a bonsai tree. Have you ever cut a bonsai tree before?
I don't think so.
All right, we're going to Steve,
All
we
right,
have
let's
so
do
many
it.
fun things
Let's
to do
learn.
together. All right, so a bonsai tree, when you cut a bonsai tree, it's not about cutting it into the shape that you want it, right? It's about actually following the natural curves and ebbs and flows of the bonsai tree and then bringing out in it the energy that you want to see. So if the tree wants to go like this, you just help it go like that a little better and, get off the little things that are like not focused and whatnot. So when you look at a person's face, like, at the end of the day, they have their own natural features, right? We get so quickly to like wash all that away in the aesthetics, and everyone starts to look a little cookie cutter. You just kind of follow the flow of that person's face and what they're trying to bring out. You ask them what they do. You ask them what you're looking for. But that being said, innovation can come with new technology, new procedures, just because these new technologies are out doesn't mean we have to chase them and, do like the lip trend or making someone look very like, I don't know how to say this without putting names out there.
You could say it, it's fine.
My PR person would get so into this. My PR person being the back of my head. But no, I would say like you don't want like everyone looking like the Snapchat filters. You want people to have a little bit of character to their face, because in the long run, 10, 15 years later, they're going to want, and things might change in their life. They're going to want to still be able to see themselves.
Yep. Speaking of innovations, I know that you offer every service from Botox to other procedures like PRP. To your point, there's so many different trends out there on TikTok and within the beauty space. How do you carefully select which innovations you want to bring into the practice?
I try to stay with everything that has a large amount of data on it. It's safe. And I know that in the long run, these treatments aren't going to be harmful as much, to my knowledge, that as possible. So treatments like PRP, it's been around for a long time. It's been used in multiple different settings, and it's from yourself to yourself. We know that it's not like introducing medications or other facts, which can be fine, but just saying like that, we know that's good. And I have a young demographic of patients, so my primary thought process is always like, what's this person, if she's starting so young, 25, 20, 24 sometimes, what's going to happen if we start so young? We have to make sure all the treatments are not going to affect her, that when she's in her 30s or 40s, it's going to be of detriment or cause her to have to get other types of treatments to correct the things that happened earlier. So that's one thing. And also, I've tried everything that I put out there on myself at least once. And if I like it and I see it work, I'm like, okay, there we go.
Doing firsthand research.
Which is crazy, because when I started this like years ago, I was like doing it to myself, and that was an experience.
That's intense.
Yeah. Don't recommend that, guys.
So I know that in the last 9 months, you've generated nearly $9 million in revenue. Congratulations.
That's so crazy, because it's much less than that.
That's the stat. You want me to do that one again?
Yeah,
then?
let's do it again.
Oh, okay.
It's $1 million. So we do seven figures, from 10,000 in the bank to 7 figures.
All right.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Ready?
I love that. Let's do 9 million.
All right. Let's go for it.
All
right. I know in the last 9 months, you've went from $10,000 in revenue to 7 figures.
Yeah.
And you also have a really high rebooking rate at 75%. What are those core strategies that led you to that traction and also to that loyalty with your consumers?
All right. So, whenever we talk about something like this, the reason I even think that was such an interesting, when I looked at that, I was like, holy shit. That came up to me because all the time I spent in the ICU, building that skill of empathy and then translating it to understanding how patients feel in the chair, how patients feel when they're talking about their vulnerabilities, or how patients feel about walking in, walking out, and making sure that was implemented so that every day they're coming in, they're feeling like a rock star. And that once I caught on to how to make sure that my patients felt like rock stars, because on the end of the day, you're coming in, if you ever get a good haircut, you feel fresh, because half the time your barber's there letting you speak, making you feel good, and you walk out, you feel like $1 million, right? So same thing. You go in there, you let your patients talk, you have a fun time with your patients, you really empathize and understand what they're going through, which can look in so many different ways. But anyways, that kind of translates to the patients being like, I feel so good coming into this space. I know I can trust this person. I know this person takes care of me. I want to come back.
Yep.
And within reason, because actually some of my patients will whatever get, catch on to this, but there's patients sometimes I'm like, you don't need to come back for a little bit, but I can just tell they just want to come back into the space. They want to just have that experience.
Yep.
And so sometimes I'm just like, you can come by we can go get a coffee or something. Very different experience.
That's awesome. And I know we talked a little bit about the name earlier, right? I want to be pretty. It's fun. It's bold. But the mission is much deeper. It helps with both external and internal improvement for your customers. How do you communicate that to new clients as they walk through those doors?
It's funny because the I want to be pretty name, it sounds so superficial and shallow, which is like obviously what it's supposed to be. It's
helps
like,
you stand out.
It's a little camp, but at the end of the day, my ethos or thought process between Prettty was just the idea of how much you work on yourself internally and externally to be a better person every day. Mm-hmm. And that can look like a 1% change every day. And when it comes down to patients coming in and getting treatments, we kind of always talk about the plan, the goal, setting up a structure that's going to help them in the long run. whether that's microneedling or whether that's better health habits, whether that's, taking on, a supplement if they need it. Like, we don't want to push anything, but I'm just saying, like, anything that they need to make an all-inclusive treatment. But that also translates to, once they start doing stuff for themselves like that, you notice that there was actually a study on this. I have to quote this because I'm going to say it. I always say you have to have the quote, but they showed that people who got treatments, actually really fascinating, when they got Botox treatments, there was a 30% decrease in depression and anxiety and increase in life satisfaction within the first 24 hours of the treatment, not related to the actual treatment. And I thought this was so fascinating because that allowed also people to make other changes in their life. Like, this is, I don't say this happens to everyone, but like quit smoking or make better health habit choices. So that was the ethos doesn't have to be communicated straight to the patient. It's just quickly and quietly changing some of those habits.
The ripple effects around them.
To actually create a bigger effect. I think they had this thing, oh my goodness, I can't remember, but I believe it was the subway systems when they were having issues with crime, and they decided to take away the graffiti instead of anything else, and that decreased crime. It's just sometimes the littlest thing that you can do to help change, and help someone focus their efforts into a different aspect can change so many more of their habits in their life. So that's one of the ethos that we carry. Is like, I'm not trying to make you look different. I'm just trying to help you start thinking about what caring for yourself would look like.
Love that. I know we talked about this a little bit earlier, that a lot of your clientele are younger, or maybe they're first timers. How do you feel you, one, attract that audience, and then two, what is your long-term strategy for them to continue to be patients?
Yeah, that is so fun because I'm really lucky to have such a young demographic of clients because, one, they're much more receptive to education in the beginning, and they're much more comfortable with talking about it. So there's two things. One, they tell their friends, which is nice. Even different generations, they might not tell everyone. They're like, "Oh, how does Sandy look so good? And she's aging well." This generation, they're all like about like, "Oh, yeah, microneedling, I got this," talking about it, which has been. I'm really grateful for that, and I'm happy for that. But setting up plans ahead of time and just starting people on healthy habits, whether it's sunscreen. When we talk about treatments like microneedling and PRP, something that's super simple but also really effective, just setting them up on plans and not saying like you need to do so much all the time. It's just like, if you do this, then one more treatment every year. They just start with a healthy plan and habit. And the other thing is I try to also keep them from going all over the place with their skincare routine because, oh my goodness, there's so much stuff on the market. And it's so easy to buy all this stuff, and their poor skin is getting obliterated with like all different creams and stuff. So we try to also get them to understand the core basics of what's in a skincare cream that works for them, so that they don't feel like every marketing experience is going to make them want to buy it, if that makes sense. So those are some of the things that help when they're younger, and also just learning to be conservative and also pumping the brakes because they come in wanting everything sometimes, and you're just like, okay, let's take it all the way back.
Step by step.
Do one thing at a time.
That's probably why you have a 75% retention.
Yeah, definitely. And they really appreciate that. I think that's one of the things I hear that a lot from my clients is that because I say no, which is really funny because I'm like, wait. But yeah, saying you have to say no to your clients a lot. Just, not in a way of like stopping them from treatment, but just saying like, I think you need to just take a second, go home and think about this. And maybe we'll come and revisit.
Makes total sense. Obviously, we talked about your gerbil business when you're 10 years old, right? So if there's someone tuning in right now that is thinking of making that leap or taking that next step and making that financial risk, what advice would you give them before they take that step? I
honestly, one of the core values I thought was really important is, first off, whatever you're deciding to do, don't do it for the money, 100%. That never gets you anywhere. Do it for the passion, something that you're passionate about. And two, really understand that the support systems around you in your life, the relationships you build, the connections that you create, those are the things that really help in the end, whether that's, a really supportive family member or a supportive friend that's just out there being your number one fan. Those are those people that actually keep you supported more than anything else, because there's going to be days when you start something like this where you are like, I'm freaking failing. Okay. And then the next day you just get a bunch of texts from a bunch of different friends telling you all the different things about you that they like admire, whatever it is, and then you're just like, okay, I can do this. So good connections, and what that doesn't mean like layers of society. I mean, like the people that actually are in your corner.
Your support system.
Your support system, who actually care. Those are the most important people to have around you when you're doing something like this. Because at the end of the day, I think anyone can do it. I really do. I just think that, it's going to be tough and you have to know that it's a challenge.
It's great advice. So what's next? What's next for I Want to Be Prettty? Any exciting developments, expansions, anything you can share?
Yeah, so I mean, we're looking on scaling right now, which I'm super excited
Very
about.
cool.
Also, loving AI. I know that this is a controversial conversation, but I am so excited. I have a friend that is actually helping us develop a facial scanner that can scan patients ahead of time, and then they can actually suggest some of the treatments. Obviously, they come in, we have a conversation ahead of time, but the fun thing about that is it's like a fun tool for people to use because, so many people want to ask the question without even having to come in. So that's super exciting. We love AI as long as it's used properly. But yeah, and that's been a huge one. And then also working along with some new partners, hopefully in the future, which I'm super excited for, but that's under wraps right now.
Sounds good. I know we covered a lot, but if there was one thing you wanted our listeners to take away about your mission, about the company, what would that be?
I think that you have to be client focused when it comes to any of these things, especially if you want retention, you want the support. You could have 100 indifferent clients, and that's going to be a headache in your life. You want the experience to be about the client, always.
Awesome.
Yeah.
If someone's tuning in that wants to learn more, maybe they want to book an appointment, what should they do?
Well, I love this because I got this domain handle. You go to iwannabepretty.com, and that's with 2 T's or 3 T's. Or you can follow at RN Eric Nietzel on Instagram. And you can always ask questions. Please, I love answering questions. I love engaging with people for any reason, whether it's consultations or business advice. It's always just been something to help because as I learn from people, we learn from each other and we just help each other grow.
That's awesome. Well, I'll definitely be checking it out.
Are you coming?
Maybe.
All right, let's do it. What are we going to do?
I don't know. Well, I'll have to do the AI scan. We'll
You're
find
pretty
out.
pretty already.
All of us will come.
Yeah.
It'll be a big group trip. But Eric, thanks so much for being here today. Thanks for sharing your story.
Thank you.
And obviously, congrats on all the success and excited to see what's next.
All right. Thank you so much, Steve. Thanks for having me here.
Of course. And thank you all for tuning in to next week for next week's episode.